This week, we have seen some exciting new enhancements from our friends over at OpenAI. And Gabe, this week, I am going to really put it to the test when I mow my lawn tomorrow and see how I can use AI in my everyday life. So Gabe, this week, again, our friends at OpenAI, they released a new GPT version, GPT-4o. What can you tell us about this?
It's definitely taking this to a whole new level for sure. So the O was for Omni, and the O in Omni is talking about omnimodal or multimodal, where now it is significant improvements around how you interact with the AI and all of the different ways that you can interact. And it's been multimodal before, but this is really taking it to a whole nother level. And we'll talk through a lot of that as we're going through the discussion today, Zach. But definitely improvements from a text perspective, from a voice, huge improvements from a voice perspective, and also from a visual or video perspective that can intake that information and provide you insight in a much, much, much faster way.
It's very exciting, and I've been using this new model for less than 24 hours, right? Gabe, I texted you last night, like, you're never going to believe this, right?
Yeah.
And as I'm testing this, I'm thinking, what can we do with this? Like, what can we actually do with this? And we have a few great examples. I want to talk about some of the examples that even OpenAI shared with us. But going back to mowing my lawn, right? One of the things I was playing with today was I was having lunch outside, and I thought, I need to mow my grass tomorrow. I wonder what AI will say about this. So I was talking to AI about my lawn habits, and a few things with this new model were very interesting. One is it's omni-channel, right? So now I can bring in live video, I can bring in photos, audio. So as I'm talking to AI, I can have it looking at a picture that I've sent. And that's what I did. I told AI, I was like, I just fertilized last week. I typically mow twice a week. I felt like I was talking to my neighbor almost, right? The neighborhood dads. And AI was telling me like, oh, you mowed 2 minutes ago, which is the example I used just to really try to trick it a little bit. You may want to wait a day, right? And it was telling me all these tips and tricks about mowing my lawn based off this photo that I sent. And I think that's where the text, the voice, visual capabilities, all, we've had some of these on the previous models, but now when we have that real-time, very quick response rate, one of the items they talked about too was the response rate is as little as 232 milliseconds, which is similar to humans, and that's a huge deal. Gabe, we could have a third person in this podcast right now, and we should do this. I'm going to write this down. One of these weeks we will do this. Have AI in the podcast interacting with the two of us. That would have been so cool.
That's wild. I didn't even think about that. We should have put that together. But that response rate of basically being at the same level as a human is something that I think completely unlocks all kinds of new and interesting use cases, because you're no longer waiting a few seconds for that person for the person, or in this case AI, to respond. It's happening in effectively real time. And that's where use cases around customer service, use cases around sales, so many of these other things that have been difficult, that would have been difficult to do before because it didn't feel like a natural conversation, can come into play. The other one that I've seen a lot of, Zach, is you can interrupt the AI and it adjusts very quickly. Before you weren't able to do that as well, where now if you're having a conversation with AI, it will, and you kind of cut it off, so to speak, like you would in a real conversation potentially, if you're a jerk, then it updates really quickly and goes right back to that conversation, which I thought was pretty interesting.
This new model is very exciting, and like I said, we were talking OpenAI and Gemini AI and all the AI, Meta AI a few weeks ago, and like I said, I tend to lean on the Gemini AI, but after testing this new model, and I told you, so I'm on the free plan right now, so I've got limits. I can only send so many queries a day, and I just want to go around my house like with live video or taking pictures or talking with this AI. So I'm going to end up paying for this premium plan. But a few other things this GPT-4o model can do is get responses from not only the model itself, but from the web.
That's huge.
That's a big one. And I used to say that's one of the big benefits of the Gemini AI. I haven't tested this yet, but I want to go back to my Google reviews example and see how much data we can pull off the web with this new GPT-4o, and again, analyze it a little bit differently, which is part of the new model, as well as analyzing data and creating charts. Gabe, I feel like you're all over that one.
Oh, all over that one. I was actually playing with that bit of it earlier today and trying to create some charts based off of reviews and whatnot. And I didn't think about that, of actually just trying to ask it to pull in the reviews. I still imported the reviews and then was asking questions of it. But that's a really interesting use case to see if I could do that same thing, but go back and ask for the reviews, since it is now more plugged into the web than it was previously. It's always been plugged into web, but it's been legacy data, for lack of a better term, where it hasn't been as real time as they're making it now. They also just signed a big deal with one of your favorite companies, Zach, Reddit, this week, to pull in more information also into the models. So they're making investments to ensure that there is recent information in the model so that it can provide better answers as you're asking these questions. I want to make sure we go back to one thing though, around the quick response around the milliseconds, because I think there's a really interesting use case around translation and language specifically. Have you looked into this one much?
A little bit. I've seen some examples, and I know, Gabe, you mentioned one here a few minutes ago around Duolingo, but would love to hear more on that.
Yeah, so one of the videos that I've seen is basically a real-time translation of English to another language. So if you were traveling and you didn't know the language in that particular country, you could use AI to say, basically, I'm going to be talking to somebody. Every time you hear English, translate that to Italian. And every time you hear Italian, translate it to English. And the AI is smart enough to understand those languages and translate it back for you in real time. And again, the real time part of this, I think, is what's so interesting. And I mentioned Duolingo to you earlier, Zach, before we actually jumped on the pod. But Duolingo is a learning platform, very popular one that people use to learn different languages as well as lots of other things. Well, after 4.0 got announced, their market cap dropped significantly, and it's because people were going, well, if I don't even have to learn a new language, if I don't have to learn that language, why would I? Why wouldn't I just leverage the tools that I have, from AI for things like, translation if I'm traveling and whatnot, which I thought was the sort of interesting outcome of something like this. And I mean, gosh, man, I just feel like OpenAI is going to eat the lunch of so many different companies.
And I want to touch on that last point, but you talked about the language use case here, and I think, high school me would have been so dangerous with this, right? Even when I was taking 2 years of Spanish, having this AI tool would have been insane. It would have made my life so much easier. But one of the other items here that this new model can do is, upload files, summarize, write, and analyze content. And when I think of that, one of the examples OpenAI actually presented on with this new model was solving math problems. So similar to this language item, it's going to use real-time video. And the prompt they used in their demo was, help me solve this without giving my son the answer, right? So it was a parent asking AI to tutor his son. And the GPT-4o model guided the user through the whole math problem. They would incorrectly say things. It asked like what the hypotenuse of the triangle was, and they would incorrectly circle it, right on this iPad, and the GPT would be like, oh, that's not it, but this is how you find the hypotenuse. Can you find it now? And then they'd circle it, and it'd be like, yes, that's right. So it's like having this tutor with you, right? And now as I age, Gabe, we were just talking about this, as I grow wiser, and still, want to learn new things. I'm one of those people who I think I learn something new every day. This is one of those things that it's going to teach you, right? If you think of the student use case, right? Or even the parents at home. Gabe, would you let AI tutor your kids? Like I totally would be all about it.
100% would, especially in things like math, because they teach math differently now different than when I learned math. It's a very different structure. So I actually struggle a little bit with my son's math because, again, it's taught differently now than it was when I was a kid. So I think there's a huge opportunity for learning there. And as you said, it's that interactivity of being able to see what that person is doing and then guide them to guide them to the correct answer, but without giving them the correct answer. That's the part that's just completely wild. I mean, again, you talk about another industry that's going to be potentially totally disrupted. There's lots of these companies that exist that, you know, are for tutoring children who are struggling in particular areas. I mean, your geometry game is going to be on point now, Zach. It's going to be ridiculous.
I mean, like, if you see me drawing triangles, like, ask me anything. But like, I legitimately think about the educational component to this, right?
Yes.
Like, I think that's a fantastic, even in college, right? Like, I don't know everything. I never pretend to know everything, but if there's an opportunity to learn it, I think of my accounting classes. You know, I spent a lot of time in my accounting classes. I went to like the supplemental instruction sessions just to learn. I wanted to learn everything I could, but having my iPad with my accounting right in front of me and being able to just have AI watch what I'm doing and guide me through, oh man, a statement of cash flows comes to mind, right?
I was thinking balance sheet. Like, actually, a credit should be, a liability should be on the credit side
like
of
even,
the balance sheet.
Even imagine, like, you know, you're about to debit an amount and it's not supposed to be a debit, it's supposed to be a credit perhaps, and AI catches that mistake. There could be a ton of use cases here. And I've got a few other use cases that I've demoed on my phone myself in the last 24 hours. But I want to go back to one of the comments you made about how companies will use this data. And a few weeks ago, we talked about Siri, and I can't imagine I said anything kind about Siri. It is not a good tool.
Don't think you did.
Google Assistant's all right. I have a 15 Pro Max iPhone with the action button, and it's mapped to Google Assistant. That's how much I like Siri. But what I would love to do is map that button now to the OpenAI ChatGPT app, because I think it's going to be way more useful. But it goes back to some other news this week, AI related, OpenAI related, and that's Apple and OpenAI looking to have a partnership for, I am really hoping, you know, WWDC is in 2-3 weeks. It's coming up, right? So I'm hoping when they talk about iOS 18, I think it's 18. Are we in 17 now?
Yes, we're in 17 right now. So yes, it will be.
Yeah, so I'm hoping they bring in this exact model into the future iPhone, future Macs.
I can't imagine the announcements this week that came out of OpenAI are a coincidence with that, you know, with that session coming up so soon. And also interesting that they announced it immediately before the Google I/O conference too. So that's a nice little shot at Google. But they're, again, why I don't think it's a coincidence is because they're leaning so much into this omnimodal or multimodal. God, am I going to have to learn a new word? I just learned multimodal, and now I'm going to have to learn omnimodal. Anyway, but they're leaning into this multimodal piece where it's, you know, scanning something with your phone, from the camera from your phone, or taking a picture and uploading it from your phone, whatever it may be. Well, that's how people are likely. We've talked about this before, Zach, but my belief is that the way that the vast majority of people are going to interact with AI is with tools that we already use. Whether that's Copilot with Microsoft solutions, whether that's, you know, OpenAI potentially built into our iPhones in the future. That is the way that the vast majority of people are going to interact with AI. And so if this partnership does come into play where OpenAI is basically driving AI, AI search, AI voice, AI interactions on the iPhone, that's going to be a massive uptake of people interacting with AI in a way that they probably wouldn't have before. There's still a lot of people that aren't going to go out to just chat.openai.com and start playing around. I know there's tons and tons of users on there, but if it were on your phone directly and if it were built into the phone, into the iOS operating system, I think you'd see massive adoption there.
One of the segments I keep thinking that would benefit from this is my grandparents. And it leads into one of the examples I have today, and kind of back to something I said earlier, but it's help me solve this, help me do this. I feel like that's a prime use case. And everyone's got an iPhone. You know, my grandparents, they have an iPhone, they have an iPad. But if they had the ability to use that live camera, take a picture, or even just talk to this assistant and get that guidance, and it goes back to how accurate the data is, and that's always the question. Sure. But I feel like there's a huge use case there. And to your point, I have the OpenAI app. This was like the second time I have used it since I downloaded it a year ago. Like I don't use it that much, but since this new model came out and I got access to it yesterday, man, all I can think about is like I mentioned, going around my house with this camera, you know, showing AI where I live and asking questions. Even as we have this podcast episode, I'm thinking of, you know, I wonder if I could like open my fridge and like ask about like the quality of the lettuce, or I'm thinking like, how far can I go? And that's going to lead into the second example I did this morning. And I had my Wi-Fi router in front of me, right? And I took a picture with the ChatGPT app on this new model, and I said, help me set this up. It identified what type of model it was. It told me which app to download, and it went step by step telling me how to set it up. And then what I did...
sorry,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you showed me the screenshots of what the instructions that came back when you did that, and I was stunned at how accurate it was and how prescriptive it was in actually helping you walk through that step by step. It was really impressive.
And then I tried to trick it a little bit, right? So after it gave me the instructions, I said, great, my system is on, but I have a red light. What does that mean? And it told me the troubleshooting steps for that system. Next, I went back and I took the WAN cable out. So I had a yellow Ethernet cable plugged into the WAN. I unplugged it from the WAN and I plugged it into LAN. And I told the AI model, I said, the device is powered on, but it's not working. And its response was, it had a list of things, but the first thing it said was, verify that the yellow Ethernet cable is plugged into the WAN and not the LAN. So it had recognized, that I plugged my Ethernet cable into the wrong port. And I thought that was fantastic.
It's wild. It's just so insane that it can actually recognize that and then provide context relevance answers for that. And to your point, folks that are maybe less technologically advanced or just not as comfortable with this, it's a great way for them to interact in a way that is actually providing useful, beneficial information back to them. To me, that completely unlocks when I think about like customer service use cases, right? So, we've been talking a lot this episode about kind of these personal fun use cases, but from a business perspective, there's obviously a natural extension into customer service use cases here. If you've got all your technical documentation, if you've got all this information loaded on your website, all these FAQs, and now that the 4o model is connected to the web and connected to recent web information, it's going to pull all that information in and help your customer through this. And it's going to be really interesting to see, Zach, as we talk a lot about, your generation and lower does not want to pick up the phone and call anybody ever, and they want self-serve. How does AI start to deliver self-serve for those generations of folks, as well as just everybody in general?
I'm glad you brought that up. I talked to a colleague about this today, but in a previous role, one of the jobs I had was to implement a live chat solution. As you mentioned, nobody wants to call in, right? If I can text or even chat on the website, whatever that looks like, great. When you set that up, you can kind of, I don't want to say train the model, but you can input specific keywords and phrases and map those to specific answers. So it was a bank, so it's like, what's your routing number? Oh, that's easy enough. That's a common question. Here it is. But now what I'm thinking is, how could you bring AI into a chatbot or even like a text messaging platform to a point where you're not getting static replies, you're getting useful information. So in the case of me setting up my Wi-Fi, it was, how do I do it? How do I do it step by step? And then, okay, well now I have a red light. Oh, here's exactly it. It didn't like redirect me to a link somewhere else or a resource off in the distance or connect me with an agent. It told me the actual troubleshooting steps. And then again, when I brought in the WAN and LAN mistake, it recognized that. I couldn't trick it. And I was super impressed by that. It blows my mind.
Agreed. Well, it goes back to something we talked about, I think, a couple episodes ago when we were talking about SEO and search. And what people want when they search is help and an answer. They don't want a big set of blue links that they have to then click through to find the specific answer that they're looking for. And that's why those AI responses that are being generated in Google and Bing and some of these other search engines are, I think, very interesting because they're changing the way that search is happening. In this way, I think it's very similar, Zach, in what you're talking about here. If you go on to a company's website, and just about everybody has a chatbot on their website now, but again, it's answering simpler questions, but if you could just quickly upload a photo or quickly upload a video from your phone that actually shows what the problem is, and then it actually answers that question for you, that's a much better experience for the customer. Just like when you get a search answer driven via AI that gives you the thing that you're looking for, it's the same exact thing on a chatbot side, right?
And it goes back, Gabe, to something we said at the beginning of this episode, and that's the response time. You don't have to have the agent responding quickly or checking their typos or anything like that. I mean, you're getting an instant, knowledgeable response. Have you ever? I've chatted with Apple a few times, and the agent will be like, "Oh, 1 second, let me look into this," right? And Apple's got great customer support as is, but there's always a situation where it's like, "Let me look into this." Now imagine with AI, there is no looking into it. It already knows the answer, right? And then you add that to that quick response time, and I think the experience would be tremendous. I legitimately wonder if you'd be able to tell the difference between a live agent and an AI system.
I would say most people probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference, provided that agent had been trained on a really good model and, of previous calls and things like that, and customers or company specific information for that company. I suspect you probably couldn't even tell the difference. And this gets to something that I think is really important around all of this too, Zach, and this is consumer expectations around what this is going to look like going forward. So with the fact that you went through and did this Wi-Fi router use case earlier today, now your expectations have been a bit reset around what a customer service experience should look like because of that. And we've talked about the smartphone generation before, and kids who have grown up in a world that they don't remember a world before smartphones. My kids are now going to grow up in a world where they don't remember a world before AI. And they don't remember a world before all of this technology existed. So their expectations as they get older are going to be very different from what, myself and even you, right? I mean, you're very into the technology aspect of this. And as we talked about before, we're definitely from different generations, but your expectations are still even going to be dampened versus what theirs are, because it's just going to be their expectation.
I wish I would have been the one to say, like the kids these days are going to grow up with AI. Is back in my day, I walked to school uphill both ways kind of thing. But it's true. I've had an iPhone 5S. That was my first iPhone, right? And now I've got the 15, whatever. It's been 10 years. But I think of just the technology out there. I use all kinds of technology. I told you I want to just go around my house with AI. But now it's just interesting, as I mentioned, the education component, and going back to that example, growing up with that, oh man, I would have loved to have grown up with that. I feel like it would have made, don't hate me, it would have made life easier, just easier. For sure.
Yeah, I agree, because even your parents obviously have limited knowledge. So even or your teachers have limited knowledge, there's no way that that a person can know everything. But we now have tools that actually kind of do know everything. If it's something that's been researched and analyzed for long periods of time, it's going to have information out on the web where the 4o model can now search for it and provide that information back. So it's a complete different game changer from an education perspective. And I know we want to talk use cases for marketers, Zach, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this educational content one. But why don't we jump to some really specific use cases for marketers that you and I are thinking about with this new model. And granted, it's only been a few days, so we're still we're still in the early stages here.
Yeah, we don't know anything, right? I think one of the big things, and we always talk about content creation. That's the easiest one. But okay. I think we're at a point now where the content creation capabilities are so good. One of the things with this new model is they call it hyper-realistic images. And again, I haven't played with this component yet, so I don't want to speak to it too much. There was different image generations. There was one where you could upload a picture of yourself and it would make it look like it was painted. And we've seen all kinds of apps like this. So I don't want to dive too deep into that. But the big one here is blogs, articles, creative copy, having AI take that into account and not only write the content, but perhaps you draft the content and it expands on it. It corrects you. It makes sure that whatever your prompt is, we're enhancing that content.
Well, and I think you can even, because it's multimodal, you could even record something via text and then upload that, and it just becomes a written article, right, or something like that. So it's going to make creating content much easier. I mean, we've talked about this before also, but we take these videos, the video version of the podcast that we upload to YouTube, and we create a written version of it. That's sort of like the dumb version of what we're talking about here. But this is taking it potentially even the other way where, hey, I have a video or I have recorded content of my voice and I want to create other content off of that. Or I've got 50 recordings of my voice and I want to actually create my own AI chatbot that's personalized with my voice, right? And feels very personal to me. There's just so many different things that you can do that you're going to be able to do with this omnimodal activity.
I'm going to have to pay. I already know I'm going to have to pay for the plus or the premium subscription because there's so many things I want to test. I can't limit myself to the 3 to 5 or however many uploads it is today. There's a lot I want to do and not that much time. So there's so much there. Another one is analyzing websites, Gabe. And we've talked about like the Google reviews, and the example I shared with you today was I sent a link to a website and I said, how would you improve conversions on this website? It not only did it give a list of recommendations, but it had like specific initiatives for each. Like there was a call to action button and how to use call to action to drive conversions. There was a whole list of things. I'm trying to pull that up real quick, but there was so much there.
I'm curious, and I want to play with this now to see if I took my phone, pointed my camera at a website, is it going to provide me even more context-specific stuff because it can actually see that website?
And that's what I want to try, but I'm over my limit.
I have to try it over the weekend once you get some more capability, or pay the $20.
Oh gosh, I think we both know I'm paying $20 this weekend.
Yeah, I think so for sure. But I'm very curious to see what that looks like. I mean, you could even do the same thing in theory for having somebody vet your ads. So if you're getting ready to post a social media ad, or you're getting ready to send an email out to somebody, Zach, we've talked about this before. There's tools that you can, I can't forget. CoSchedule, I think, was the one we were talking about. That's the headline writing tool. Well, wouldn't it be cool to just be able to point your phone at the entire thing and it would actually give you feedback on the full email, and do that based on insight that's coming from a broad set of data within the 4o model?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of value there. Going back to this website thing, I just pulled up this list here, but in the recommendations, clear value proposition, it was giving me tips on how to improve my value proposition. But the thing I loved about it, so I sent a URL to the website and it knows the industry of the website. I didn't prompt it for that. It knows the industry. In this case, it was the financial industry. It's talking about interest rates, personalized services, there's community involvement. There's all kinds of information, this value proposition, just from knowing that this is a financial institution. And it's giving me all these suggestions, again, based on that website. So I think, CoSchedule has some AI tools built in, but I'm a little, curious now as to how this new model will impact them, right? We talked about the language translation app, Gabe. Now, what else is AI coming for now? Because this model it's such a big improvement. We talked about this. It's such a big improvement. Again, I went from not using this thing more than a couple times a year to primary user overnight.
Well, the one, and this is maybe a good place to kind of wrap it, but the one that I think is probably the biggest industry that might be disrupted here, and we talked about it a little bit, but is education. If you have a live tutor that can have this back and forth conversation with you, why would you pay for a tutor? Why would you send your kids to an after school tutoring program or something like that where you can have the computer do it for you? The other thing that I think is really interesting is, when I still fall into this a lot, Zach, and I'm sure you probably do too, because I know you love some YouTube. But when I'm trying to figure out how to do something, most of the time I'm going to YouTube and searching for a video of how to do that thing. Well, when you do that, you're getting potentially a 30-minute video, and maybe only 3 minutes of it is something that you actually want to consume or is relevant for the topic that you actually want to learn. With something like this, with the 4o model, you could actually kind of create your own almost course or own knowledge base of content by pulling all this information together from various places, whether it be various YouTube videos or various educational websites and things like that. So I think there's a lot that's going to happen from an educational perspective that is going to be quite different than the way we learn now. And I want to have you respond to that because I'm curious your thoughts. But
I
also
have
think it's really. I also want to make sure we come back to what this means for companies who are trying to teach people about things, whether that be teach users or even teach employees how to use specific things. So I'll put a pin in that, and I'm curious to hear your response on the rest of it.
Great, quick example I had based on a conversation with a colleague today was, if something breaks in my house, I need to learn how to fix it. That's where I go to YouTube, right? And now I'm thinking, okay, like leaky sink or, broken, whatever that may be, hole in the wall. Hopefully not, but I would love to just take a picture.
As somebody with children, I can tell you that sometimes there are just holes that happen in the wall.
How did that get there? But yeah, so I really wanted to use AI to see if I could learn how to do a specific thing. We talked about mowing the lawn, right? We talked about that. That's a great use case. That's an example. But I want to do that. The other part of this is I'm thinking, as we go through this podcast, I'm thinking of a million different examples now. In one of my vanity lights, like the light bulb burnt out. It's this weird small, I have no idea what kind of light bulb it is. It's got the text in the bottom now, but I'm totally going to take a picture and send that to AI and be like, what kind of light bulb is this? What's a good replacement? Because it's not an LED bulb, right? I'm totally going to see how far I can get with this new AI model on these things. But, I don't want to be salty about AI, but I genuinely feel like this is, I don't want to say the first useful AI model we've come across, but I feel like this is the first model where we have, situations in life that we can use AI to assist with. It's not just us asking questions or, showing off, or we summarize YouTube videos in the gym, and I feel like there's an actual use case behind this, whether it's in your everyday life. We talked about this potential iPhone integration and how awesome that would be.
Yeah.
Gabe, we always talk about the enterprise applications of AI. I know I use Copilot daily. I'm sure you use it twice daily as I do. But I think there's real life use cases in this new model.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. To me, it's a step function of where we were at before. We've been rolling with these AI models, and there's all these AI companies that have come out over the last 18, 24 months, whatever. But this feels like a big step up from where the trajectory that we've been on. And I'm with you. It feels like something almost brand new again, where there's a whole bunch of interesting use cases that are kind of come out of this that we probably haven't even thought of yet. And, I want to circle back to that educational one just for whether it's customers or employees, things like that, or salespeople that you're trying to train. I think there's an awesome opportunity to start to pull in and create those customized learning tools. Especially when you're talking about an enterprise use case, because you can train that model based off of all the data and insight about your particular product or solution that you're trying to sell or trying to educate people around. So there's just going to be so many different ways that people are going to leverage this. I'm excited to see. As you said, Zach, we're just a few days in, and so it's really hard to know exactly the direction that all of this is going to head, but it's quite fascinating.
A few days in and 5 queries in, we've got a long ways to go. It's amazing though, Gabe. Again, this AI revolution happened 12 months ago, started 12 months ago. So I can't wait to see where we are at in another 12 months, another 24. It's amazing to me. So I'm very excited.
The rate of change is rapid, man. They always say this, right? It's like technology moves at a more rapid pace, just constantly, right? It's the classic Moore's Law thing, and I really feel like we're in that space now where it's going to continue to just move at a very, very rapid pace. And that's the part that I think is both scary and exciting as marketers and as people working in business is what tools, what things should I actually start using AI for? Because you kind of go like, I got to do something here, because if you're just completely ignoring it, you're likely going to be way, way, way behind companies who are leveraging it. But it's almost a bit overwhelming as to where to start. Maybe maybe that needs to be a topic for another episode.
I still really want to do the thing now where we bring in AI and have AI as a guest. I absolutely, giving the conversations. I'm in here in my office talking to my phone like I'm like I'm crazy now, but I honestly think it's so much like talking to a person. We could easily have it as a podcast guest, and for those listening, you may never know.
Correct. Yeah.
Other than the fact there's a very smart person on the call now.
Yeah. We'd have to create a weird like avatar for it too.
Oh gosh.
Now we're
Well,
really
we could.
getting into the
I was gonna say
metaverse.
we could just have AI create its own,
There we go.
look.
No,
There, it's
I like
we
it.
don't have to do anything. But Gabe, I love this episode. I think we're seeing some significant improvements, and again, very optimistic for the future of AI. Seeing this as well, I am going to spend my weekend again going around my house, going outside. Probably talk to the neighbors about it, but I definitely want to dive into GPT-4o a little bit more. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. Like I said, it's been less than 24 hours. Gabe, I hope you have an opportunity to dive in as well this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, for those of us still listening, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to give us a follow on your favorite podcast app. And if you'd like to catch the latest video podcast, we have those on YouTube as well. And if you'd like to grab the blog that Gabe mentioned as well, we share that on LinkedIn. So be sure to keep an eye out for that every week.